there's a very open question about how the U.S. is going to fit in with the rest of the world, how that relationship is going to evolve in the years ahead. And you have a lot of big debates about whether the U.S. is a declining power or whether its decline has been sort of way too much foretold and is not at all the case. I do think it is the case that the U.S. will be moving towards a more is going to be a more competitive situation than it has found itself in for a very long time, and that for much of the 20th century, the U.S. was this sort of unwitting beneficiary of the rest of the world doing crazy things and blowing itself up. Sort of all the smart people fled to the U.S. We had all the factories, and we were on a relative basis in very good shape. And I think that started to change. I think the rest of the world, there's still a lot of crazy stuff going on in many places, but the absolute insanity level seems to have lessened quite a bit from what it was for much of the 20th century. And I think in that sort of a competitive world, it's likely that we'll end up with very, very different policies. One counterintuitive instance of this is that I don't think you will have a collapse of the dollar or massive inflation like we had at various points in the 20th century. In 1971, when Connolly, the Nixon Treasury Secretary, took the dollar off the gold standards, he famously remarked to the press, well, it's our money, but it's the rest of the world's problem, because the rest of the world was stuck having no choice but to have dollars. Now that we're in a more competitive world, and that includes competition between currencies, dollars and euros, and to a lesser extent pounds and Swiss francs and yen, or maybe even renminbi in China one day, you will not be able to take that sort of a cavalier policy, and there will be no hyperinflation, I think. Instead, we're going to have a much tougher monetary policy, and that, of course, suggests that you have then all sorts of bubbles, like the housing bubble in the U.S. at this time is probably a symptom of, in part, a belief that housing prices always go up, and that was sort of that sort of expectation was bred by this 20th century history of inflation, which was structurally linked to a world in which the U.S. wasn't competing with anybody else. So I think there's sort of all these ways, these big picture things intersect with some smaller ones.